No matter the outcome, we will elect our 47th chief executive. But first, we're going to take a look back at how the presidents became president. This is your countdown to 47. Time now for Joe Biden. Before becoming the 46th president, Biden was one of the youngest senators ever elected at the age of 29 in 1972. He served in the Senate for 36 years. While he was a senator, Biden ran for president twice, once in 1988 and another time in 2008, losing both times. However, in 2008, Biden was tapped to be the running mate of Democratic nominee Barack Obama. The two went on to win the election that November. Joe Biden served as Vice President of the United States for 8 years, leaving office in 2017. Biden announced he was running for president 2 years later. In 2020, the United States was hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, which remained a prominent issue throughout the campaign. After winning the Democratic nomination, Biden faced President Trump in the general election that November. The race was called with Biden as the winner, but Trump claimed widespread voter fraud had affected the outcome. On January 6, 2021, a joint session of Congress convened to certify the 2020 election, but the count was disrupted when violence erupted at the Capitol. Congress certified Biden as the winner the following morning. Joe Biden went on to become the 46th president of the United States. Shortly after taking office, Biden ordered the withdrawal from Afghanistan, seeking to bring a formal end to the nearly 20-year conflict. While U.S. troops pulled out, the Taliban regained power in Afghanistan. As the final stages of the withdrawal unfolded, the Kabul airport was attacked by a suicide bomber, resulting in the death of 13 American service members and over 150 Afghan civilians. The evacuation continued, and America's longest war was soon over. President Biden also made handling the ongoing pandemic a top priority. In 2021, he issued controversial federal mandates that required millions of Americans to receive the newly developed COVID-19 vaccine or submit to weekly testing. In his domestic policies, President Biden signed 2 bills prioritizing infrastructure spending, lowering energy costs, and investing in clean energy to combat climate change. In 2022, the Russo-Ukrainian War began. President Biden pushed Congress to send aid to Ukraine to provide military assistance. As of October 2024, the U.S. has sent over $64 billion in aid. Following the outbreak of the Israel-Hamas war in October 2023, the United States, with Biden's support, has sent over $17.9 billion of military aid by the war's first anniversary. President Biden ran for re-election in 2024 and won the necessary number of delegates in the primary process to secure the Democratic nomination for president. With former President Trump having done the same on the Republican side, a rematch election was all but certain. In June of 2024, President Biden and Trump faced off in a debate. Following what has been seen as a poor performance, Biden faced mounting pressure from leaders within his own party to drop out of the race. After nearly a month of this, Biden acquiesced to the will of his party and formally announced his withdrawal from the 2024 race and his endorsement of Vice President Harris for the nomination on the Democratic ticket for president. Joe Biden has served as President of the United States from 2021 to the present day. His term in office will finish January 20th, 2025. With Biden having exited the race, this ensures the fact that we will be electing our 47th President of the United States, whether it be Vice President Harris or former President Trump. Tomorrow, we will elect our 47th President, so stay tuned because once we know who won, we will have one final episode to end our countdown. Until then, I'm Eric George for Valley News Live, and this has been your countdown to 47.